When the day darkens, hope's small candle flickers and dies.
The Other Family by Joanna Trollope. Read by Fenella Woolgar. Looking back, it astonished her that none of them had broken down in the hospital. Even Dilly, who could be relied on to burst into tears over a shed eyelash, had been mute. Chrissie supposed it was shock, literally, the sudden suspension of all natural reactions caused by trauma. And the trauma had actually begun before the consultant had even opened his mouth. They just knew, all four of them, from the way he looked at them. They knew he was going to say, "I'm so very sorry, but..." And then he did say it. Chrissie didn't know how she had got them home. Even though Tamsin and Dilly could drive, it hadn't crossed her mind to hand either of them the car keys. Instead, Chrissie had driven, upright behind the wheel, as if she was trying to demonstrate good posture, up Highgate Hill and down the other side towards home, the house they had lived in since Amy was born, 18 years ago. Of course, there was no parking space outside the house. There seldom was in the evenings, after people got home from work. Chrissie said, "Oh, bother," in an over-controlled, ladylike way, and Dilly said, "There's a space over there, outside the Nelsons." And then nobody spoke, while Chrissie manoeuvred the car in, very badly, because they were all thinking how, had he been there, he would have said, "Ornamental objects shouldn't be asked to do parking. Give me the keys." And Chrissie would have laughed, and thrown the keys at him ineptly, proving his point, and he'd have inserted the car neatly into an impossible space in no time, so that they could all please him by saying, "Show off," in chorus. "I make my living from showing off," he'd say, "and don't you forget it." They trooped across the road to their own front door. There were no lights on. It had been daylight when they left, and they were panicking because of the ambulance coming, and his frightening pallor and evident pain, so nobody thought of how the return might be. Chrissie opened the front door, while the girls huddled behind her in the porch, as if it was bitterly cold. It occurred to Chrissie, irrelevantly, that she should have swept the leaves out of the porch, that Richie had always said that his granny in North Shields had scrubbed her front doorstep daily, on her hands and knees. Daily, with a brush and a galvanized bucket. Chrissie took the keys out of the door and dropped them. Tamsin leaned over her mother's bent back and switched on the hall lights. Then they all pushed past and surged down the hall to the kitchen, and Chrissie straightened up, with the keys in her hand, and tried to put them into the door's inside lock, and found she was shaking so badly she had to hold her right wrist with her left hand in order to be steady enough. Then she walked straight down the hall, not looking in at the sitting room, and certainly not in at his practice room, where the piano sat, and the framed photographs and the racks of CDs, and the certificates and awards and stacks of old sheet music he would never throw away. In the kitchen, all the lights were on, and the radio, and the kettle was whining away, and all three girls were crying and crying. Later that night, Chrissie climbed into bed, clutching a hot water bottle and a packet of Nurofen. She hadn't used a hot water bottle for years. She had an electric blanket on her side of their great bed.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?